I'm watching these stories of African villages on YouTube, and they're done using AI. But I'm gonna tell you, these stories are so good. I watched this one story, and this young woman married this man, and he was horrible. He beat her, and he complained about everything she did. And 7 years, and she was always a good wife to him. And 7 years into their marriage, he beat her one night, and she went to sleep and she died. And oh my gosh, I was crying because she was so good to him, and he was such a bully. And so, not even, I think the grieving period, she said, was 3 months. So 3 months later, he goes to another village far away, because like the neighbors knew what he was doing, because they heard his wife cry when he was beating her, but nobody did anything. And so he goes to this faraway village, and he finds this girl, and he marries her. He's like, oh, he threatens her, and she acts afraid, and she's very obedient, and this and that and the other. And anyway, this goes on for 6 months. And finally, at the 6-month point, he comes home, and there's no breakfast on the table. And he's so mad. And so he goes into her bedroom, and she's in there, and she's reading a book. She's just laying on the bed reading a book. And he's like, where's my breakfast? And she's like, oh, I didn't feel like making it. He's like, do you want to die? And she said, if you want breakfast, go make it. And he's managed to go 6 months without punching her. He's raised his fist to her, but he hasn't punched her. And so he actually goes to put his hands on her. And when he does, she grabs him by the wrist, throws him to the ground, pushes his head to the mat, and he called her a witch, and she said, no, I'm just a woman who knows how to defend myself. And she said that he was going to be the one doing all the housework. He was going to be the one doing all the cooking, blah, 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 because she knew what he had done to his dead wife. And she said, because when he met her, he thought he was going far enough away that she would never know what happened to his sweet wife that died because of him. But in actuality, she came to the village, and she talked to everyone, and she found out about his wife, and she decided that the wife needed to be avenged, and she was going to teach this man a lesson. So anyway, she told him, she said, if you don't do exactly what I want, then I'm going to go to the village elders and tell them exactly what you did to your wife and how she died. And she said, I have witnesses that will back up what I've said. And so, anyway, he starts cooking, cleaning, everything else, And, a couple of times he tries to buck up and tries to, take back his power by beating her. And she ends up chasing him down the street with a broom, beating him with the broom. And after that, he just just gave up. But there's so many good stories. If you look up like African stories or whatever, it's so good. I don't even know. I think I'm into like probably 30 stories by this point. And there's different channels that do it. So I'm just following a bunch of different accounts now that do it. But they're really good storytellers. Very good storytellers. But yeah, it even shows like the new wife going out and laying flowers on the dead wife's grave. Because like at one point she starts to feel bad for him because people in the village are making fun of him. But then she remembers his poor wife that, died because of him. And then she doesn't feel so bad anymore. Anyway, I just got finished watching one where this woman, she was a really good African cook. Like, she was the best cook. And people would hire her to cook meals, and they would provide her, like, a bunch of, like 5 cows or something like that. And, rice, 30 bags of rice, and all that other stuff. And her and her brother had this con going on where she would cook all the food. Then when it was all done, she would fill up coolers full of the food before she would serve it. And the brother and her would, have the food for their families. And, when the people that were paying would ask questions about where's all the food, she would say, "Oh, your cattleman, he cheated you. He sent you skinny cows." Or they would say that the person who sold them the rice cheated them because he sent them old rice and it's soaked up. I can't remember. Anyway, that's why it didn't look like there was much. And anyway, finally she ended up getting busted because this African woman had a feeling of what she was doing. So she stayed with her. She insisted on staying with her. She claimed that she wanted to learn to cook just like her. And of course the brother came around and, was trying to, get her to get the food so they could put it in the coolers, but it didn't happen. There's always like a lesson. Are you okay? There's always like a lesson at the end of it. And then there was this really good looking guy in the village. He was really handsome, muscular, and athletic. Come to find out he was sleeping with all these married women in the village. He was a local mechanic. And he had gotten all these women pregnant. And, they didn't know that he was sleeping with all of them. He was just a smooth talker. And anyway, it turned out he ended up with 47 kids. Because all these kids oddly looked alike. And the chief ordered him and them to take DNA tests. Well, a local mechanic, he can't afford to feed 47 kids. So they end up working out a deal where he has to do all the work, all the repairs and stuff on the families who he had kids. He had to do all their work for free. So that meant he had no money to, for himself. He didn't get paid. I mean, I'm sure he got paid for the people who he wasn't working for, but he didn't have kids with, but he definitely didn't have a lot of time to do that kind of work. But yeah, 47 kids. This is really good stories. collar like this, where it has to go like this, and you have to put this pin through it. This is strangest thing. Telling you, we have to learn to be wizards of these collars and harnesses. Why is it? Okay, I think I put it to the wrong side. Yep, that's what I did. I put it to the wrong side. Yeah. I always wonder if sometimes I don't know. I'm getting older now. Why can't I see the it won't go over his head. Alright. There's Mr. Remi Pants. Remi. Oh. There's Remi. Merry Christmas, Remi.